which is going to be entitled Implementation in Action. That's our overall title. And I'm going to let our didactic presenters introduce themselves. So Stacy, you can go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stacy Arena. I'm principal at Davidson Middle School, and with me I have
Brandy Kane. I'm the RTI resource and PBIS point of contact.
You can go to the next one. Okay, so a little bit about our school. We are a Title I school. We have it's about 62% free and reduced. We have about 900 students. Currently serve about 17% ESE, 21% of our students are ELL, whether they're monolingual or bilingual. And then you can see the breakdown of the demographics there, with the majority of it being Hispanic. Before you do anything with PBIS and establishing what you want at your school, you really have to make sure you build your team. And I could not do this work without an amazing group of people that I work with and some of the supports that we offer at my school. And some of these supports, we are able to use some of our Title I money to get some of these extra supports because the district does not provide them. So for example, we have 2 success coaches that help with the work. Ms. Kane is our RTI resource teacher, who's really the one behind the scenes. The district does provide 2 assistant principals based off of our population. We do have 1 literacy coach that works with all the teachers, and then district provided is 2 guidance counselors. We do have a social worker. We have an ELL resource teacher. I have a part-time psychologist, and new to us this year, we did get a full-time behavior coach that works with teachers and students, which has been an amazing addition to our team. So that's very important that you build your team from the start. So what we do is we always look at data to drive everything that we put into place at Davidson. And this is data from 23-24. This is old data, and this is really what drove us to start our school as a PBIS school. And you can kind of just see the number of incidences throughout the year being disruptive, disobedient, horseplay. Remember, I'm in a middle school, so we're going to have a lot of those. Skipping class, dress code, and so on. And then defining and developing those expectations. For example, for our school-wide behaviors, our expectations, we have be responsible, be respectful, and be safe. That's everything we do at Davidson. We did come up with those 3. And then what behavior kind of ties into those categories. So like, for example, being disruptive could be an example of not being respectful. The district defines for us behavior definitions in the student code of conduct book. So this was just an example of what does it mean to be disobedient or insubordinate, because everybody tends to have their own opinion of what that means. So this kind of defines what it is. And then there are some consequences that are mandatory or based on the severity that the administrators can give to a student based off of the infraction. So that's just an example there. But what we do at our school, the next slide, is that we define these expectations with our 3: respectful, responsible, and safe. And what does it look like? This is very important to define with a team of what does it look like in the hallway before and after school to be respectful, responsible, and safe, and really breaking it down into what does that mean? What should we be seeing? Not negatively put, but positively. Like we should see polite language. We should be accepting adult directions, showing patience and smiling. Those are just some examples. And so on. We did for classroom, for restroom, and cafeteria. And then you see on the bottom there, we do PBIS reward points to tie into all of those expectations. And one thing you have to do is make sure, like our signage, our district did provide these for us. So what does it look like in the hallway? We have these posted in every hallway. We have them posted on the walls outside. If you keep going, you'll see some more examples of these signages that are all over campus. So they're good reminders for students and for teachers to say, instead of stop running, please walk. And if you keep going, we also put them in the cafeteria so that when we're in there with 300 plus students at one time, it's something that we can always refer to and remind students to do. The leadership team, we meet over the summer every year and develop this behavior flow chart, which is really an integral part of making sure that this is set before the school year starts. And we tweak it, we had a few tweaks this year, but it hasn't changed much in the last few years. But if you look at the chart, it may be hard to see, but you can see what the staff manages to the left and what administrators manage to the right. And why that's important is before we had this flow chart, it seemed like administrators were handling everything. From throwing a pencil to the kid's not working, to the kid didn't bring a book, which if you work in a school, in a middle school, that's ridiculous. That cannot be sent to administrators for every little thing. So really defining what does staff need to handle in their classrooms versus when it gets to administration. So this is something that we define and come up with the team, because staff will be putting some of those minor things that I was just talking about into what we call minors in our system before it actually becomes a referral. And then the main thing too, we really have to progress monitor and message this throughout the year. So what we do is we have monthly MTSS meetings by grade level that the team leaders facilitate, looking at data and trends to see what we need to do each month when we meet. We do PBIS walks quarterly. That's something Ms. Kane oversees with a checklist. I believe we have an example coming up, and she'll talk through what that looks like. At our weekly staff meeting, it includes also social services and coaches and admin. We look at trends and we look at students and we look at what we're doing as a school to make sure we're including incentives and things to make sure that our data is matching what we want to see. Monthly team leader meetings, again, that's kind of the same thing I was saying earlier with the MTSS. They meet to segregate that data so then they can facilitate it to the MTSS meetings, and it always goes back to data. We used to have our MTS meetings where we would talk about, I always say, little Johnny isn't doing this and little Johnny isn't doing that. And then if I don't teach little Johnny, I'm sitting there bored and it has nothing to do with me. And I'm wasting my time and they're wasting their time. And then you know where that goes from there. Why are we having these meetings? So really changing that mindset to what does the data show? What are we seeing trend-wise throughout, let's say, grade 6? And then that would be something that we target to see what we can do to improve it the next month. So really getting away from talking about individuals and looking at data and trends.
And what was mentioned before with the walkthroughs. So we have a team, the PBIS team, and we do walkthroughs beginning of the year, and then we do it again in the middle of the year. And we use that data to determine our next steps. One of the criteria that's on the look fors that we are working on right now, we're in year 4 PBIS, is making sure that teachers have the rules posted specific to the expectations of our school, but also the rules match what they want, in their classroom, and it's positively stated. And then the district comes through and they do like a random check. They'll choose 5 random students and 5 random teachers and ask them questions like, what are your expectations? They will say, do you know what the rules are in this class that match the expectations? And the students, when asked if they know how they're rewarded, I am so happy to say that they all know, because we have a Dragon store and it works like an Amazon. So they order online and it's packaged and delivered to them the next day. So they get really excited to earn those points and purchase those fun items. And this is our tier 1 behavior plan. So this kind of goes back to when we meet over the summer and we talk about what is it that we need as a team. So we want the beginning of the year, our 6th graders, this might be new for them. So we have to really address any new students, what our PBIS program looks like. And then in the middle of the year, we continually tweak. So for example, if we do different campaigns, so we just got done doing an academic campaign showing responsibility. So then teachers are kind of reminded to give points when students are showing up on time to class, they're being responsible. They are working well with each other in small group and completing their assignments. So teachers are reminded to kind of focus on giving those points with the responsible. And then we compare the data from before the campaign to the end of the campaign. And we see a great movement in terms of less minors and more PBIS points. And this is the good old pyramid for MTSS. And it's really important when looking at your school data to ensure that your data shows that 80% of the students are making the right choices. So if you know, if you have a school where the pyramid's upside down and you've got 50 to 60% of your students are getting referrals and it's just constantly, I call putting out fires all day. That's where your team really needs to focus on getting that tier 1 strong and just being consistent. The language is used, the expectations are used correctly. The students know by specific praise, just really training and retraining. It took us about 2 years to get our tier 1 to the 80% and higher. And now we, as a school, we're really focusing on the tier 2, as Ms. Arena mentioned earlier. We do in our leaders, our team leads, MTSS team lead, and focusing on our tier 3 behavior. We use decision rules. This is a guideline for teachers. So they don't just say, oh, this student needs to be referred for tier 3. And then when we go look at the data, they have no minors and they're not giving PBIS points for that specific student. So this is just a guideline of what tier 1 should look like. And then we have one for tier 2 and then going into tier 3. And we do it for academic and behavior. Sorry, academic attendance and behavior. Obviously, we're focusing on PBIS. And Focus is our program. So the biggest learning curve for the teachers was putting the data into Focus or any program, right? So they're like, oh, the student is doing this all the time, blah, blah, blah. But when we go look into the program, there's no data to support it. So it was really training our teachers to back up and ensure that what they're putting into minors are following up with communication with the parents. Student notes. So our program has a section where teachers can put in like interventions that they used, if they gave a conduct cut, what it was, a conference mediation, so they can elaborate a little bit when they give those minors. So then administration can see all of those steps in the flow chart that they are supposed to be following before a referral. Obviously with PBIS, we want to see that same student getting a lot of points. So we do a lot of comparisons. For example, 8th grade right now, they give more referrals, but they're giving the least amount of PBIS points. So training them to really like, we want to undo that balance. And then this just goes back to our flow chart. So all of this is data that teachers are to put into our program. And then we use this data in leadership, and then the leadership then takes it to their team, their grade level team, to desegregate and create those tier 2 groups and target behavior and the intervention they want to do for those tier 2 groups. And we use PBIS points a lot for the tier 2 groups. And this is the last part. This is what we're really focusing on. Like I said, we've been in PBIS for 4 years or so. And now we're kind of, what do we do for students who are not being successful at tier 2? So they refer into our program for a PSLT, and then we have a group that gets together, we problem solve. This is where we really look and discuss that one student. And we look to see, are they getting PBIS points? What's really going on? What's creating the behaviors with the student, and try to determine what intervention would be best so that we can get the student to be successful. And I kind of just covered this. It's just the format of going through how to refer. When teachers do this, it comes to me, and then I can look to see, is the data in there that really supports, and then I schedule the PSLT.
So if you didn't hear anything else and you were sleeping, get back with me, because we're already on year 3 or 4, roughly, to get to this point. It certainly does not happen overnight, and you have to start small and keep it simple. Otherwise, you're going to overwhelm everybody, and then nothing is going to work. I promise you. So you take it step by step, because if you don't have the teacher buy-in and them actually doing and being consistent, none of this works. So like I said, over the years, we start small, you build on that, And then the teacher will buy in when they start to see it works. Because we seem to all be programmed to focus on what's not working. Sit down, stop running, you know, all the things that come out of our mouths naturally, we have to undo that as adults and start focusing on those. Thank you for sitting down. Thank you for coming in on time. It sounds silly, but it works. And the data backs it. Sixth grade, I think it was first quarter, we had a meeting and the data showed sixth grade teachers were given the most PBIS points and they had the least amount of referrals. And like she said, eighth grade is the opposite, right? It works and the data doesn't lie. It's all transparent. And when they start to see that, it really starts to change the culture and make a big difference. And like I said, we started with like paper dollars, which was, kind of ridiculous. And they started stealing them from each other. And you have to realize, oh, that's not going to work because they always find loopholes. So you got to kind of figure out what's going to work for your school until we finally went on this online program, which then is another program for teachers to learn and navigate. And there's some challenges with some of that as well. So really working through all of that to make sure and also stressing that the entire school is responsible for MTSS. It's not just Ms. Kane, it's not just me, it is the entire school that has to work together in order for it to be successful. And lastly, this is just an example of like the PBIS online store that we use here with points and then how we reward students. And also those tier 2 groups that we identify those kids that aren't being successful when we meet with them and set goals. Does anybody have any questions?
If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. Thank you guys so much. We really wanted to share a success story with you all, and we wanted you to hear from a school that is actually doing this work, has challenges, but they're working through them, and they have a lot of systems in place. And it'll be great, even if you forgot some of the things that they mentioned, you can go back and watch the recording because there was a lot of great ideas and suggestions. So I hope that you all benefited from that because I think you guys did a great job. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing what's going on in your building. It's really exciting. So we wanted you guys to feel excited also. We know you're in the throes of that first year and it feels like a tornado sometimes, but you just have to stick with it and it'll just keep working towards it. So thank you guys for being here.
And relentless. You just gotta, like to say, being consistent is key.
Hmm.
Do so.
Yes.